Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are today we have a big show for you today. We are going to be talking about the thrilling Game 1 between the Celtics and the Pacers in the first game of the Eastern Conference Finals in the NBA. That saw both teams try to lose this game, and the Celtics come out on top in overtime. We'll break down that wild series of events, especially the last minute in the first segment, and then we'll finish off the NBA, talking about the four teams remaining, which one of them has the most to gain by winning an NBA championship, specifically around the NBA superstars for their legacies. All four of these teams have young superstars that will cement their legacies or create a long-lasting effect on the league with the way this season plays out. So we'll see which one has the most to lose this season, and then we're going to finish, and then we're going to move into the NFL. They're talking about expanding to an 18-game schedule with 2 bye weeks, and we'll talk about that, see if, I know they just expanded to 17 games, we'll see if that is something that should be approved, if how far the NFL is going to go, how many games that they'll push this to, and what the maximum amount of games that they should or could possibly push this to without it becoming too much. And then we're going to finish off our show in baseball. We're going to talk a little bit about the Phillies and Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani dealing with an injury to his pitching arm all season, but he's putting up historic numbers at the plate. An article came out on ESPN asking if he should not pitch again, and we'll talk about that. And then the Phillies are on a torrid start, a historic start for them. They're setting records, 100-year records for them, so we'll talk about that as well. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave a comment. Leave a donation at gsmcpodcast.net. Appreciate anything that you do give. Appreciate you taking your time on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon to talk some sports with me. But like I was saying, we are going to get right into it. We are starting off our show today with some basketball. The Celtics take an overtime Game 1 thriller against the Indiana Pacers in a game that at points seemed like both of these teams wanted to lose. Right? We're taking a look at a game where it started off and it seemed like the Celtics were just going to put the Pacers away. They started the game on a 12-0 run. It was 12-0. And then the Pacers kind of went on a little run of their own. They cut the lead down to 7, and that's where it kind of stood at for most of the first half. It was a 7-point game, somewhere around there, until the very end when the Pacers go on a run, and Tyrese Halliburton hits a logo 3 at halftime to tie up the game, 64 going into the half. So we have a tie game at halftime. And then the Celtics, again, they start to pull away. In the third quarter, they go up big. They go up by 13 points or so. But the Pacers, all credit to them, they get back into this game. They take a solid lead in the fourth quarter. It looks like they're going to be able to close this out. The announcers are talking about how huge of a win it is for the Pacers. And with about 30 seconds left, Tyrese Halliburton turns the ball over out of bounds, crossing into the Celtics half of the court. Then the Celtics cut the lead to 1 possession. It was a 5-point game at that point. Cut it to 1 possession, and now the Pacers have the ball. All they need to do is inbound it. There's like 5 seconds left on. There's 8 seconds left on the clock. It's a 3-point game, and they just need to get the ball in the inbound. And credit to the Celtics for this sequence, because the Celtics defense was great for that last minute. But they can't get the ball inbounded. It goes off of Pascal Siakam's hands, and it's tipped out of bounds. The Celtics have a baseline out of bounds play with down 3 points. And this is where probably the most controversial game of the play of the game happens, right? You have 5 seconds left. You have the Celtics, who are the best 3-point shooting team in the league, with a 3-point deficit. Do you foul? And this is where we start to get to two different kinds of ideologies, because hitting a contested three is tough. Hitting a foul shot is easier, right? But also, if you foul them before they shoot, they get 2 shots, you get the ball, you're still up 1. Now, coaches have different philosophies on this. I am in general in favor of fouling here. It kind of feels like a cheap strategy, but you don't want what's happened in this Celtics game to happen, And the Pacers, as they've shown so far in the playoffs, not just in this game, but all throughout the playoffs, that they're willing to let the game play out, let whatever's going to happen. We saw it in the Knicks series in a very similar situation. Jalen Brunson tried to draw a foul. He did a little flail shot, and it missed, and the Pacers ended up winning that game. I believe that was game 3 of that series. But now the Celtics, they inbound it to Jaylen Brown in the corner, and instead of fouling, Pascal Siakam goes up and basically sets a screen in front of him. He puts his hands behind his back, gets up in his face, and I thought he did a really good job of closing out without fouling. In that situation, it's incredibly easy to foul. We saw it happen with the Thunder and the Mavericks in that game 6 a couple days ago, where PJ Washington was open in the corner. They fouled him. He hits all 3 free throws, and they end up winning the game off of those 3 free throws. It was a 2-point game at that point, but there's things you have to take into account. Jaylen Brown hits a tough contested shot. Pascal Siakam up in his face is good defense, in my opinion. You don't want to draw a foul if you're letting him shoot. You don't want that opportunity for a 4-point play to happen, which is, I think, what they were worried about. I know there's been a lot of criticism of the Pacers, and obviously hindsight is 2020. Nobody talks about that Knicks game not deciding to foul because it worked out. This one ends up going to overtime. They did have a chance to take the lead after that. They had a half-court possession. They called a timeout. They had a whole play. The Celtics defense doubles Tyrese Halliburton, and he had time. He ends up settling for a really bad shot. I feel like he had the opportunity to pass it out, but in that situation, he was not going to pass, which might have been the right decision. I feel like there was an open player for him to find if he was being doubled like he was, but he wasn't really looking to pass. He was looking to get open, find a shot, and it goes to overtime. And all credit to the Celtics in that overtime period. Like I said, both of these teams seemed like they were trying to lose this game. The Pacers were trying to lose this game down the stretch, and so were the Celtics. The Celtics did not shoot very well in that fourth quarter, especially down the stretch. And the Pacers turned the ball over twice in the last minute to send it to overtime, basically. So both of these teams did not play their best down the stretch, but this really sucks if you are a Pacers fan. The amount of momentum that you would have had if you took Game 1 on the road against the best team in the Eastern Conference, the way that you did coming back from down double-digit points multiple times in this game, to stay in it, the amount of grit that your team played with, potentially overcoming 20 turnovers. Neither one of these teams protected the ball very well. But the Pacers should have won this game. Completely honestly, the Pacers should have won this game. There was no reason why they were so careless and sloppy with the ball down the stretch, especially in that last minute. You have to be more careful. They stepped out of bounds like 3 or 4 times on from the broadcast angle, the near side, right past home court. They turned the ball over there 3 or 4 times in the end of the fourth quarter and overtime, and it really just took the winds out of their sails. Now, I understand this Celtics defense is good. They played a great game, especially in that fourth quarter. The Celtics, in the overtime period, the Celtics dominated. They were just a better team in the overtime. They locked in, and they held the Pacers. The Pacers were unable to match that energy. And this really sets the tone for the rest of the series, in my opinion, right? This was a game that I think the Pacers had to win. If you've been listening to my analysis on this series, the Celtics were a team that hadn't really woken up. And I'm not sure if this game is one that will wake them up, but it feels like in that overtime period, they kind of woke up. This is a game that I feel like they had to win. Do I believe that they can take one with Kristaps Porzingis not being in play until game 4? Yeah, I do. They've been really, really good at home all playoffs long, but taking one on the road would have been huge. It really would have. And I'm scared to see how the Celtics come out in game 2 of this series, because that overtime period, there were stretches in this game where you could see they're just a better team, especially at the beginning. They came out with pace. The Pacers are the ones that's supposed to come out fast and outrun you up and down the court, but the Celtics were running up and down the court on the Pacers, especially in the beginning of that first quarter. The Celtics had breakaway after breakaway because the Pacers just weren't getting back on defense. They weren't ready for the Celtics to run the floor like they were doing. And they eventually adjusted, and this was a really fast-paced game. This is going to be a really fast-paced series. Both of these teams love to run the court. They're very similar styles offensively. The real difference is that the Pacers don't know how to play defense, and the Celtics do. And the Pacers might be a little better at shot making. At least they have been throughout the playoffs, but the Celtics rallied. They were able to come back. This is their best win of the postseason. This is their first postseason game where I feel like they've really been threatened. They lost those one game in each series, but that was just because the other team was shooting. And this was a game where, they both played well, or they both played at the same level, and the Celtics had to show some grit and come back in this game. So it's very impressive to see them be able to come back in a game like this, and be able to show that backbone. This is what championship teams have to be able to do. Again, it's against the Pacers. They're a 6th seed. They are the team with the worst odds to end up winning the championship, not just because they're going up against a better team in the Celtics, but the teams in the West are nothing to scoff at either, and we'll see them in action soon. But Celtics take game 1 in overtime. It's a great win for the Celtics. Overtime period might have been their wake-up, going to overtime against this Pacers team in game 1, a game 1 that they're lucky to have won. And maybe the lucky to have won doesn't wake them up. Maybe they're still going to come out just like this. And if they keep playing like this, again, they didn't play that bad, but they were sloppy with the ball. Both teams were. Whichever team can control the turnovers, can win the turnover battle at the end of the day, I think is going to win this game, these games, because turnovers are killer. And they killed the Pacers, especially down the stretch. And that's going to be the X factor, because, the Celtics weren't clean with the ball either. Whichever team can be cleaner with the ball in game 2, I think is going to win, assuming they can both play like they did in game 1. But yeah, Celtics had a great game for the Celtics, great comeback win, great job keeping it interesting for the Pacers. They were down big. They also had a big comeback. This is just a comeback story for either team, regardless of who won. We'll see what happens in the rest of the series. I think this is really a deflating loss for the Pacers, and I think this is the game they needed to win. I still don't think they'll get swept. I think they'll take 1, maybe 2, but this is a game that it felt like they needed. So we'll see how it goes. But in our next segment, we're gonna finish up our basketball coverage today. We're gonna do a little talk about breakdown of all 4 teams in the Final Four, talk about their superstars and which one needs this championship the most. So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Everybody in the world, please don't give me a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the face shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make it every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't need shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shoulder 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't replaced, I'll get my town. If I want that shit, then I'll I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, I'm losing bits, I'm losing shit, I'm stupid myths. You choose to live, or choose to dip, you choose to fight, or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. Losing my mind.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the thrilling overtime Game 1 between the Celtics and the Indiana Pacers. That saw the Celtics win after a great comeback. A huge shot by Jaylen Brown in the corner helped them send it to overtime. In this segment, we're going to continue our NBA coverage. We're going to talk a little bit about all 4 teams in the playoffs right now, see which one of them needs this the most. Obviously, a championship for any of these are going to be huge, but talking about legacies, storylines for the future of the NBA, looking at the career trajectory of some of these teams, some of these players on these teams, which one of them needs this championship the most. So stick around for that. Before we get into it, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, anything that you would like me to talk about, go ahead and leave it in the comment box, in the description. At gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a comment. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of your questions, everybody tuning in and watching, talking some sports with me on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to continue our NBA coverage here, talking a little bit about each of these 4 teams that are here. Which young superstar needs the championship the most? And as I said in the intro to this segment, I understand that question might be kind of baffling. Might not be phrased the best way, but, obviously, every one of these guys needs a championship. This is, as I've talked about before, kind of the opening stage for a new era, and this championship, I think, is going to define a lot of rivalries, a lot of storylines for the next 10, 15, 20 years in the NBA. You have a team led by all 4 of these teams led by a young superstar, all of them with bright futures, assuming they can keep this up, and the winner is really going to help define the era, I believe. You have in one corner the Boston Celtics. We've been talking about them. They've been on the cusp of this for some time. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they've been right out of reach of the NBA championship. They made it against the Golden State Warriors a couple years ago. They've been to the Eastern Conference Finals a bunch of times. This all culminates in this season, where it feels like everything is lining up for them to take their stage as the new dynasty, the next big team in the NBA. And they've done that in the East. I feel like this season is a disappointment if they don't at least make it to the finals. If they don't beat the Pacers, I think it's a disappointment. We'll have to see what happens. But the Pacers, on the other hand, a young team led by Tyrese Halliburton, who at the beginning of the season looked like an MVP candidate. Now he got hurt, fell off a cliff a little bit, hasn't really been the same. But nonetheless, he's led this young Pacers team that has a lot of room to grow to the conference finals against a really, really good Celtics team. He's been able to lead this team, get some gritty wins, and stay competitive against all these great teams in the East. They've probably had the toughest road out of any team, in the East. I mean, out of the 2 teams remaining, the Celtics were the obvious favorites, so they're not going to have a tough road, but they've gone through a lot to get to this point. They had to go through the Knicks, they had to go through the Bucks, both of them who were dealing with injuries, but Tyrese Halliburton, this would be a huge, stamp of legitimacy if he's able to take this team to a championship, a team that has a lot of holes. It's a huge stamp of legitimacy for his superstar candidacy. And in the West, you have Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. This championship, I think would be, I mean, again, if Anthony Edwards wins it, he's cemented himself as the face of the league, I believe. Whoever wins this championship, I believe, will be the face of the league, assuming it isn't Tyrese Halliburton, which is nothing against the Pacers. They just don't have that kind of draw, that aura that people have been talking about with the superstars. But Anthony Edwards, this is to be the face of the league. Rudy Gobert, if he wins this, I think he's cemented himself as a Hall of Famer. I know he's still kind of on the brink for a lot of people. He doesn't get a lot of respect from NBA fans, NBA players. But if he finishes up this season with an NBA championship, I think absolutely you can't really deny it. He helped anchor a great defense to a championship run. He's won 4 Defensive Players of the Year, and Karl Anthony Towns can be taken seriously as a championship winner. You know, a great second option. And the last team here to talk about is Luka and the Mavs. You obviously have Kyrie, who's already won one as a second option in Cleveland, but Luka, if he wins it this year, you can make the argument that he is the best player on the planet, which, you know, this is huge. So that's kind of the storylines here for these 4 young superstars here. Who needs it the most and who needs it the least? I would say to cement their legacies, I think Tyrese Halliburton has the least pressure on him to win this championship. Like I said, they're the they're the team that's expected to win the least, and win or lose, I don't think it's going to affect his legacy too much. Now, win, it could be an all-time legendary run, but lose, people aren't going to look at this team as a disappointment. It's already a success. You made the conference finals. Third overall, I'm going to give it to the Celtics. And I know winning this championship seems like something they need to do, but everyone's already talking about Jason Tatum as this guy who, you know, needs a championship team, a great team around him to get it done. If he wins it, it's not really going to change his legacy. He has this super team around him, and it's great. Boston needs a championship to make this a successful season, I think, or at least to make it. But I think as far as needing it for legacy, this one is the least important. I think it's the second most important for the Mavericks. You know, they come out, Luka cements himself as a face of the league here. We talked about it a little bit when we were breaking down the reasons why all 4 of these guys might need this championship. And finally, the Timberwolves. There's too many stars here that can benefit too much from them winning this championship. I think the most amount of positive for personal legacy can be done by the Timberwolves winning a championship here. You know, there isn't like a super team kind of energy around them. You have a great young superstar, a great defensive player, and this is a very exciting young team. I feel like this is the team that stands to gain the most personnel-wise by winning an NBA championship. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Again, Pacers, Celtics, Mavs, Timberwolves here are my rankings for teams that need it or benefit the most storyline-wise by winning a championship. Maybe I switched the Mavs and the Celtics there, actually. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. In our next segment, we're going to transition out of basketball. We're going to move into the NFL. There's talks of them expanding the season yet again, just a couple years after they expanded to 17 games, looking at an 18-game schedule. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that. And if this is where they're going to stop, how much longer do you think that they can extend the season? So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about which of the NBA superstars and teams benefit the most by winning an NBA championship this year, and we finished talking about the Celtics' overtime thrilling win against the Minnesota Timberwolves in segment one of this show. We are going to transition out of the NBA, though, in this third segment and move into the NFL. We're going to talk about the possibility of an 18-game schedule happening just a few years after they expanded the schedule to 17 games. I'll give my thoughts, and we'll talk about what this means for the future of the NFL. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. I appreciate all of you for donating, watching. If you have a burning question about sports, leave it in the comments. Leave it in a donation. I will get to it as soon as I can. I will answer any and all of your questions. I appreciate you tuning in and spending a beautiful Wednesday afternoon talking some sports with me. Again, that link on the screen right now is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we're going to transition into the NFL here. We're going to talk a little bit about an 18-game schedule. 18 games, something that the NFL seemingly always was going to expand to. 17 games doesn't quite work for the way that they do their schedule. They have the 6 games against your division. They have the, games against each an AFC and NFC division. So that's 10, 14. And then you had one random game against an equal NFC team and one random game in an equal AFC team, and that got you to 16. With 17, they just threw another random team in there, and it would alternate between AFC and NFC. What you can do with this one, with 18 games, is throw an extra AFC and an extra NFC game in. And it kind of makes that more even of a schedule when you're looking at it, which is a good thing. They're talking about not only expanding it to 18 games, which I'm always a fan of more football, but you get to the point where it starts to get to when is too much, right? They're adding a second bye week, which, if you do the math here, would put the Super Bowl on a federal holiday weekend, so you'd get Monday off. And I think this makes it perfect. I think 18 games is a perfect place. I understand expanding it, but the NFL has expanded now, or this isn't official, but if they do end up doing this, they would have now expanded twice very recently. And the NFL has proven that, hey, if you can give us money, we will show up. We're big into money, right? And more games equals more money. It's simple math here. You have to worry about player safety at a certain point. You have to worry about, how this is going to affect everybody's bodies, how if they can hold up. And again, I'm in favor of 18 games. Big fan of 18 games, but you start to get to the point where now you have a 20-week season. Now you have now you're getting to the point where you're starting to push more into the NFL offseason. This NFL calendar is going to push all the way around, and we've seen this in more recent years. The NFL is expanding. They went from Sundays to taking over holidays. They had Thanksgiving every single year on Thursdays. They had Thursdays, they had Mondays, they had Sundays. And now they're starting to expand more at the end of the season to some Saturday games. They're taking the whole weekend. And they've taken over Christmas, which traditionally was in the NBA's day. They're taking over more and more holidays there. They are going to expand until the NFL is on every single day of the week. Don't be surprised if we see some more Wednesday football, if we see some more Tuesday football. They're expanding to Friday games. They have the one Friday game in week 1. Christmas is on a Friday this week. It's all over the place. They're expanding. They're trying to make a week long of football, it seems like. Now, it's not something they're doing all the time. Sunday is still football day, and I expect that to continue to be the way that it is. But we're starting to get to the point where the NFL is expanding. They're going to new countries. They're talking about Australia games. They're playing a game in Brazil. They're playing games in Germany, in Mexico, in London, all over the place, And it's good for this league to expand. It's getting huge. It's huge in the U.S., but it's starting to grow overseas. And if you want a sport like this to continue to grow and expand, you have to bring it overseas. So this is all great and all, but when does it stop? Right, and this isn't a conversation we need to have now because 18 games isn't happening yet, but it is something that needs to be in the back of mind because when does it stop? When does the NFL stop expanding, and when does the NFL look at its schedule and say, hey, this is good? We've seen the NBA kind of hit a wall, and I know it's not because of too much expansion, but 82 games is too much for the NBA, right? And we start to get to a point where the regular season doesn't matter. Now, 18 games versus 16 games isn't going to make that difference in the NFL. But if we keep expanding in the NFL, the regular season games are going to start to matter less. Players are going to start to sit out more because they matter less, and you need to be ready for the future, the more important games. Same thing in baseball, 162 games. It's a really long season. A lot of these games don't seem like they matter. Hockey is kind of perfect at 82 games, I think, actually. But the NFL continuing to expand. Right now they're in that sweet spot where every single game matters, and you're going to have everybody tune in because every single game matters, But keep expanding, more and more of these games aren't going to matter, and you need to find that sweet spot. I think 20 weeks is about the maximum you can do. I really do. I think if you start getting into weeks 21, 22, 23, some of these weeks just aren't going to seem to matter as much anymore. And it's not just for the future of the NFL. Records are going to be shattered with more games. We're already seeing these records start to go down, but I would like to. I think 18 games is the max that the NFL can do, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But going any more than 18 really feels like it's just not going to work out in the future of the NFL. Again, it's a super physical sport. We see injuries happen all the time, and it's good that they're adding a second bye week because that was a big complaint. If they move to 18, they need a second bye week. I truly do believe that, and this isn't anything that's happening right now. Like I'm saying, this isn't anything that's happening right away, but it is a lot of talk in a lot of NFL circles, and it feels like it's going to happen. Something that is changing is they're getting rid of the chain gang. They're adding electronic measurements, which is great. It's time. There's all these antiquated jobs in sports. The MLB umpires, strikes and balls being called. The chain gang in football. These kind of these jobs that are done by humans that probably should be taken over more by computers. The chain gang is dangerous. We've seen players get hurt on the chain, trip over the chain, and it's fine to have those markers on the field. It's probably good. But as the official form of measurement, stuff can go wrong. We obviously have the infamous index card situation. And, there's lots of situations where the chain has been great. It's a great system, but we have technology now that we can make it electronic and tell the difference. We see it happening in the UFL already. They have the electronic measurements. They have the chip in the ball that lets you spot it for when there's questions about this. They don't use it all the time, but when it's close, it just runs a simulation and it shows exactly where the ball got. So it's more accurate. It's quick. It's not like it's going to slow the game down more than taking out the chains. Excuse me, the chains would. It would actually speed it up. But that's just a couple of the changes that are going on in the NFL that are being talked about. In our next segment, we're moving out of the NFL and we're going to finish off our show with the MLB. So we're going to talk about two different MLB stories. We're going to talk a little bit about Shohei Ohtani. There was an article that came out talking about why he might just want to stop pitching and move to hitting full time. And Phillies and Ranger Suarez are off to historic starts. Starts that haven't been seen by them, by team history, in over 100 years. So we're going to talk about that, those two players, those two teams, in just a second. So stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the potential expansion of the NFL season to 18 games. We talked about the Celtics overtime game winner and which one of the four teams remaining in the NBA need to win the finals the most. How would it affect everybody's legacies? In this segment and in the next segment, we're going to move into some baseball talk. It's been a while since we did some baseball talk, and I want to do some updates from around the league. I know we do our weekly power ranking segment, but today I wanted to talk a little bit about some specific players and stories that have been popping off around the league. And we're going to focus on one hitter and one batter, Shohei Ohtani and Ranger Suarez. We'll talk about some other teams that are similar with them, but we're going to start off with the main attraction in baseball. The most interesting player that I've seen in the league in a very long time is Shohei Ohtani. But before we get into what he's been doing, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate all of you for leaving a tip or donation. If you have a burning question about sports, don't be shy. Go ahead and give it an ask. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions, and you can control what we talk about here. Just put that question in the comments. Leave it with the donation link. That's gsmcpodcast.net. It's always scrolling across the bottom scroll on our little lower third there, as well as right here on the screen right now. Once again, gsmcpodcast.net. And I appreciate all of you for sticking around, watching some sports with me on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But like I was saying, time to talk some baseball. I feel like it's been a bit since we talked some baseball on this show. We talk baseball all the time. Hello, how are you doing, Kelsey? We talk baseball a good amount, mostly with our power rankings, but we're going to focus on some other stuff that isn't power rankings here today. An article that I saw on ESPN about Shohei Ohtani kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Talking about, should Shohei Ohtani quit pitching? Obviously, Shohei Ohtani is a phenom. One of the best pitchers in the league when he's healthy, and one of the best batters in the league already. And splitting your time between them, obviously you're not going to get your best work on both of them because you have to focus on both. The article posed the question, is he too good of a hitter to pitch? And it compared him to Babe Ruth. Obviously that's the number one comparison that he gets because Babe Ruth was very similar, talking about what he did with the Red Sox when he was pulling double duty. And Babe Ruth himself said he didn't think that you could do it. But Shohei Ohtani has proven that he can't. He's been a Cy Young candidate and an MVP candidate in the same season. His power numbers, and if what you're just looking at what he's done this season as a batter, behind as a DH, he's putting up numbers that rival the best hitting seasons in baseball. Kelsey says, I think he should keep pitching because he's really great. And it's obviously, yeah, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball when he's on. You're absolutely right. He's in that Cy Young conversation. He's a bona fide ace in an era where the aces are kind of going away. You can send him out there for 7, 8, 9 innings, and he will get that job done. He'll be the best starter in your rotation. But this article points out a lot of looking in the future for stats wise. His WAR numbers, his wins above replacement, his BWAR. It kind of hurts him to be just a DH. It takes away half a win share. He could easily be putting up historic numbers right now that, talk about, put him in company with Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth, Mike Yastrzemski, some of these greatest seasons of all time. But he loses some positional value as far as the numbers go. I mean, you talk about what he's doing. His triple slash of 353, 423, 658 is insane. That's not a normal thing to be putting up as a as a player. He's putting up historical numbers already just behind the plate, and if you throw in his pitching value when he will be pitching again, it's just impressive what he can do. He already has a 205 WRC plus. 100 is the league average, so he's 105% better than any other player in the majors, right? Than the average player in the majors, and 13 points better than any other player. It's crazy the numbers he's putting up. This is not normal stuff, but it's even crazier to go and think about what he could be doing if he focused 100% on hitting. Right now, we're seeing him kind of do that because he's rehabbing an injury that's keeping him off the mound for this season. So we're going to see him full-time hitting this season. We're seeing what he does. Maybe the best hitter in all of baseball right now. He is in line for a triple crown. 40-40 season. He has 11 steals already. But, you add the pitching stats to it, and it's been an injury concern with him. He's been injured for the last he had 1 or 2 completely healthy seasons as a pitcher, right? And outside of that, he's gotten hurt. It's affected his availability. And when you're talking about a guy like Shohei Ohtani, you want him to be available. You don't want his body to break down sooner than it has to, right? Because you signed him to a $700 million deal, 10 years, $700 million. The Dodgers are going to have time with him. You obviously want to get the most that you can out of a guy like Shohei Ohtani. But when he is putting his arm in danger, it takes away some of those at-bats that he's getting, and you want him in the lineup at all times. There were, obviously, Babe Ruth wasn't the same pitcher that Shohei Ohtani is, and he's not facing the same competition, but Babe Ruth switched over to hitting full-time, and you see where that got him in conversations as the best baseball player of all time, and Shohei Ohtani is already in those conversations because of the versatility that he has and what he's been able to do. He came over late from Japan. He's a little older already, but we just want him to play as much as possible because he, like you said, Kelsey, he is not human. It's not a normal thing to be able to keep doing. And you don't want him to break down. He's already had a long injury history, and that injury history is a little bit concerning. If you're a Dodgers fan, if you're a Shohei Ohtani fan, you want him out on the mound as much as possible, or out on the field as much as possible. So maybe you move him to full-time hitting was the question. I personally wouldn't. I want to get out as much pitching talent as I can. Now, keeping him at a two-way player for his entire career might not be possible, but the way he is right now, while he can still do it at this high of a level, there's no reason to stop him. We go 5 years down the line, where Shohei Ohtani is where the injuries are starting to catch up to him on the mound. He's not quite as effective. He's not able to go every single day as a pitcher and a batter. Then maybe we start to cut it back. But right now, there's no reason to cut back anything he's been doing. Just let him be special, right? Let him be the first player in MLB history to potentially win a Cy Young and a batting title in the same season. He has the potential to do that, and that is some legendary stuff. And there's no reason to take that away from him. It's my thoughts. Let it ride until it can't. But there's always the people that want to maximize his numbers, his advanced numbers, and there's ways to do that by moving him to the outfield. There's ways that you could make his win shares go up by a full point just by him being average defender in like center field. But that's just advanced baseball metric stuff. It's not really going to affect the way that he plays behind the plate. But anyway, let him pitch until he can't. In our next segment, we're going to finish off our show talking a little bit about the Phillies and Ranger Suarez. They are off to historic starts of their own. Ranger Suarez is doing things that no Phillies pitchers has done since 1901, and the Phillies are on their best start since the 1930s. So we're going to talk a little bit about their season, if they're the team to beat in the NL, and anyone that can compete with them. So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished talking about Shohei Ohtani and whether or not he should continue pitching or just move straight to batting. In this segment here, we're going to finish off our show talking a little bit more about baseball, talking some Phillies and Ranger Suarez, talking about the insane start that they are both onto. Thank you, Kelsey. I am on every day from 5 to 6 here weekday. I appreciate you subscribing. Before we get into all of that, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave it there or in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you sticking around and watching, talking some sports with me on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon here. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show here today talking a little bit about Ranger Suarez and the Phillies. Starting off with the player, Ranger Suarez has been the pitcher number 3, the third string, I guess the number 3 pitcher in the Phillies organization for the last couple years with their deep runs into the playoffs. This season, he's kind of taken that leap ahead of Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler to be that number one pitcher. He's doing things that no Phillies pitcher has done since 1901. First time a player has done this. He is only 28 years old. He has an ERA of 1.36 right now. The record, and then again, that's the third lowest ERA in the first 10 starts. And this is what we're talking about. Goes back to 1916. He had against Alexander, who had a 1.24 ERA and 1.31. So this is the second best start, second best personal start by any Phillies pitcher in the history of the organization, which dates back over 100 years. It's incredible to see what he's been able to do. Ranger Suarez 9-0, 1.36 ERA. That's not normal numbers. The MLB record by Bob Gibson is 1.12 ERA, which seems like an untouchable record, especially in a era where the scoring is at a premium, or scoring is the premium. The juiced ball era, the live ball era, the StatCast era. We start to see more and more home runs, and what Suarez has been doing. He's the first pitcher to have this kind of start in the entirety of the MLB since 1966, when Miracle did it for the Giants. It's crazy to see what he's done, and some people might not even have him as the best pitcher on the staff. Now, definitely this season, he's been the best pitcher in the league, and he's helped bolster what is most likely the best pitching staff in the entire MLB. I brought up Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler already. The Phillies have 4 guys in their rotation that have an ERA under 3, and it's really shown. They have the most wins in the majors. They have 35 wins already. They have an incredible start. This is they're 27-6 in their last 33 games. That is their best stretch of 33 games. They're tied for their best stretch in 33 games in the history of their organization. Again, it's a very, very storied organization. But Ranger Suarez and the pitching has been the huge story that helps propel them to this. Their hitting has always been very good, but it hasn't quite come in yet. This always happens with the Phillies. Their hitting starts slow, but when their pitching is like this, it's really, really hard to ignore. But like I was saying, this is an insane start. Not a normal thing for the Phillies to have. And it begs the question, are they the team to beat? Coming into this season, the Braves seemingly were the team to beat in the major leagues here. In the National League, at least. They are coming off, they bring in Chris Sale to go with maybe the best rotation in all of baseball, and they have the MVP coming off, they have Ronald Acuna coming off an MVP season. They have Matt Olson. Their lineup is stacked up and down, and now the Phillies come out here, and they were always going to be a great team. You go back and you watch them, they were always going to be a great team. But talking about, what they've been able to do, especially this early in the season, and again, it is early. They're only 50 games into the season at this point. But being able to start this hot, have the best record in all of baseball, it's not really a spot where at least I had the Phillies penciled in as. I had them penciled in behind the Braves, that number 1 wild card spot. They've been really, really impressive. So impressive. Bryce Harper, offensively, has done an incredible job keeping the pace going, and overall, this just everything has seemingly gone right for the Phillies. They had a little bit of a slow start, but again, 27-6 in their last 33 games is not normal. That's not a pace you should be able to keep up. But they don't look like they have any signs of slowing down right now. Again, this is their best start in history. First time since 1901 they've had this start. They've just been able to win games, and they're looking unstoppable right now. Now, again, it's a long MLB season, so anything can happen. But the way the Phillies are going, and the way that and the way that the rest of the MLB is looking, the way that the Braves are off to a slow start, the Dodgers are still a threat. We just finished talking about how insane Shohei Ohtani is, and he's trailing in some metrics, batting wise, to his own teammate, Mookie Betts. So they probably have two of the best hitters in the entire league, also to go with one of the best pitchers in the entire league as well in Tyler Glasnow. The ESPN does ratings of pitchers. Ranger Suarez has the best rating by a pretty wide margin, but Tyler Glasnow from the Dodgers is 6th. Zach Wheeler, also from the Phillies, is 8th. You know, and Chris Sale from Atlanta, who I didn't touch on yet, has been insane. 7-1, 70 strikeouts. He's back to his old self, it seems like. Under 200 batting average against him. He's 3rd on this list. So it's been very, very impressive to watch these pitchers go off, especially in the NL East, that battle between the Phillies and the Braves. Again, looking at this pitcher rating, the Phillies' top 3 starters are all in the top 20 of the entire MLB in their pitching rating, according to ESPN, and they have Spencer Turnbull on here as well at 41. So they have 4 pitchers in the top 40, 3 in the top 20. It's insane to see what a great pitching staff that it has been for the Phillies. And if they can keep this up, they're absolutely World Series contenders this season. Probably favorites out of the NL right now. And I know that's a lot to say with the Dodgers right there and the Braves there as well, but if the season ended today, I think I'd take the Phillies to win the World Series. I think they're the best team in baseball right now. It's been one of the more impressive starts to a season that I have ever seen, especially with that pitching and the way that their offense hasn't quite unlocked yet. It's really only up from here. But yeah, let me know what you think. Any major stories in baseball, the Phillies, anything else we talked about today. I appreciate all of you for sticking around. I appreciate you joining a little conversation with me. We'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m. On all the social networks. I appreciate you sticking around, joining me on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back here tomorrow. You have a great rest of your day, and I will see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool. I put up feel like it's gonna be a bad day. They're trying this shit, and the copy ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. Nice. I don't wanna go.